Hey there, fellow educators, and honestly, anyone who's ever wondered what would happen if we actually listened to teachers for once. I'm Leah Cleary, and this is If Teachers Ruled the World. After 25 years in the classroom, I've learned that teaching isn't really about having all the answers. It's about being brave enough to ask the right questions, and maybe, just maybe, admitting when we have no idea what we're doing, which, let's be honest, happens more often than we'd like to admit. So grab your coffee or whatever, and let's talk about the real stuff, the messy, imperfect, sometimes beautiful reality of what it's like to shape young minds while trying to keep our own sanity intact. Because if we're going to change the world, we might as well be honest about what that actually looks like. All right, let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to If Teachers Ruled the World. I'm Leah Cleary and I teach AP World History, and World Geography at a high school in Georgia. Last week, I talked about using a gallery walk to survive the week before exams when everyone's brain is already on winter break. This week, we're talking about what happens when you don't have a choice, when the content requires direct instruction and you have to lecture even though nobody wants to be there. It's exam week. Exams start Tuesday. Monday, I have to lecture a little bit in world geography and world history. I know it is not ideal. It's going to be short, but it has to happen. At least this week is easier than last week because we're almost done. Exams and all. We're all tired. We're all ready to be done. But we still have to get through Monday's content before we can hit full review mode in class. I've sent a review home and I've been sprinkling in short reviews in class to get ready for the past few weeks. I have a blog post about that I'll link to in the show notes. leahcleary.com/review for exams in 15 minutes or less. There's a resource in the free resource library on my website for one of these strategies. I'll link to how you can sign up for this in the show notes as well. So today I'm sharing two strategies I'm using to keep students awake and thinking when I'm talking at them. Think, Pair, Share, and something I learned at the Georgia EdTech Conference. It's a crazy easy buzzer trick. These aren't elaborate. They're not going to win any teaching awards, but they are going to keep my freshman world geography and my sophomore world history students alert. And that's all I need right now. Here's the thing about December teaching. Sometimes you have to lecture. I know there's research that says lecturing isn't the best practice, that students need active learning, that direct instruction should be minimal. And I agree with all of that to an extent. But sometimes you have information students need, and you don't have time for a 3-day inquiry project or a full gallery walk or stations or research or whatever. Sometimes you just need to give them context so they can understand what comes next. So you have to turn the lecture into active learning. And we should really be doing that anyway. That's where I am this Monday with world history and world geography so that we can get to where we need to be in May. In world history, we're picking up with the Ming Dynasty. But I can't just start there without giving them some context for what happened between the fall of the Han and the rise of the Ming. That's a lot of history the Georgia Standards leaves out. I can't spend a week on it. I don't have a week. Exams are Tuesday. In world geography, I have content about nation states and politics that my freshmen need before we can move into the exam review. It requires some direct instruction. So the question isn't, should I lecture? The question is, how do I lecture in a way that keeps them engaged when their brains are not feeling very cooperative? Let me walk you through what I'm doing in world history first, because this one's a little more complex. Students are going to watch about 5 minutes of a video about what happened in China between the Han and the Ming dynasties. This is a longer video, but one thing I love about Google Slides is that you can set start and end times when you embed a video from YouTube. So I'm not making them watch a 20-minute documentary, just the 5 minutes they need for this context. After the video, here's what happens. We'll be doing think, pair, share. That is nothing earth shattering. The think part is 2 minutes. Students pull out their dry erase boards, or actually in my class, it's dry erase sleeves, but I'm going to call them dry erase boards just because it's easier. I set a timer for 2 minutes. They're going to summarize the major changes that occurred in China from the fall of the Han to the rise of the Ming dynasties. Now, this is key. I need to see their thinking. That's why we're using the dry erase boards instead of just having them think quietly. When they're writing, I can see who's processing and who's staring blankly at the board. That visibility matters. The pair share part is 1 minute. The timer goes off, they turn to their partner and share what they wrote. 1 minute of discussion, that's it. They're comparing responses, filling in gaps, talking through what they learned from the video. Then there's the whole class discussion part. We come back together. I'm calling on pairs to share what they discussed. We're building a collective understanding of what happened between the Han and the Ming in China. I'm filling in anything they missed. We're making sure everyone has the context they need to understand the Ming dynasty. So here's why this works. The video does the heavy lifting of content delivery. So I'm not just talking at them for 15 minutes. I know that I said this is lecture, and it is. It's on Google Slides, but the video's doing the job here. The 2-minute think time forces individual processing before they can just copy their partner's answer. The dry erase boards make their thinking visible to me, and the writing is good for them. And see, I then can see who's confused while there's still time to help. And the pair share gives them that social interaction they desperately need, which keeps them more engaged than passive listening would. Total time? Maybe 10 minutes for the whole thing. That's manageable. That's sustainable in December, right before winter break. Later in the same class, we're doing another think, pair, share. But this one uses a sentence expansion strategy lifted straight from the book Writing Revolution. Students are going to read 3 paragraphs from their textbook. The section's called Ming, China, and Europe. They're going to complete a sentence expansion on their whiteboards in 5 minutes. It starts with a sentence kernel that students expand on. Here's what that looks like. I give them a sentence kernel. The kernel is they had a trade policy. The student's job is to provide the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and then write one complete sentence that synthesizes all of that information. So it might look like the Ming Dynasty of China had an isolationist trade policy in the early 1400s because, and continue, the students would explain why. They're extracting key information from the text. Again, I'm not just talking. This is on the Google slide. Read these 3 paragraphs in your textbook. They're synthesizing it into one coherent sentence and practicing cause and effect reasoning with that because at the end. When you break it down into who, what, when, where, why, and how, it's actually pretty straightforward. They're not writing an essay, they're just building one good sentence that shows they understand what they read. Most students actually do finish in the 5 minutes. And again, I started them with just a kernel that said they had a trade policy, and they added the who, what, when, where, why, and how to it. Now, the first few times I teach this, I model it. But at this point in the year, halfway through, they know the structure. While they're working, I'm circulating with my timer running. If I see confused faces, I stop and engage with that student. Okay, let's start with the who. Who are we talking about? What are we talking about? Where were they? When did it happen? Why were they doing it? How were they doing it? It's that simple. I'm just scaffolding in real time instead of waiting until they turn something in and realize they didn't understand. And let's be honest, this is on a whiteboard, so they're not turning anything in. And that, my friends, is by design. Then we move into pair share. For 1 minute, they share their sentences with their partner. Then we discuss as a class and we move on. I'm teaching content, meaning trade policy, and skills, reading comprehension and synthesis writing, all in one 6 minute activity. That's efficient teaching when you're drowning in content and running out of time before exams. And here's the thing, if they can't synthesize it into one sentence with a because, they don't actually understand it yet. The sentence expansion makes that learning visible immediately instead of me finding out later when they bomb the exam question. Now let's talk about world geography. These are my freshmen. And I learned this strategy at the Georgia Ed Tech Conference this year that I thought was absolutely brilliant, especially for freshmen. Here's the setup. I have to give a very short lecture about political geography. It's content they need. But these are ninth graders, the week of exams, who would rather dance on hot coals than listen to me talk about political geography. So I'm using a free digital tool called CrowdBuzzer. I go to ccg.buzz/host and set up the game. I get a code in the upper left corner. Students go to ccg.buzz on their Chromebooks and enter that code. Now they're all connected to my buzzer system, and I'll put these links in the show notes. As I'm lecturing, every time I say the word nation state, they buzz in. The first 3 students to buzz each time get a piece of candy. Not gonna lie, this is Pavlovian conditioning meets classroom management. I'm gamifying the most basic cognitive task, listening for a specific word, to force engagement during content they need but do not want. Will it be chaotic? Yes, it will. They're freshmen. Will they actually listen to my lecture? Also, yes. I'm using Jolly Ranchers because I'm not spending a fortune on this one. I try to get candy inexpensively after holiday sales, the big bags from Costco, things like that. And I'm not saying nation state 50 times. I could never afford that. You have to be strategic. You sprinkle it in, maybe 5 or 6 times during this short lecture. So I'll be giving out about 15 to 24 pieces of candy total. I can manage that. Students are on their Chromebooks with the buzzer pulled up. As I'm talking, they're taking notes, but they're also listening for that specific word. When I say it, they click the buzzer, and I can see on my screen the order they buzzed in. First 3 get candy. A lot can go wrong, though. These are freshmen. They love candy. They can get really competitive. I'm probably going to have to bring them down a few times. Okay, guys, we're still learning here. The buzzer is fun, but we're not screaming every time someone wins. If the same person keeps winning, I'll probably cheat a little. Not gonna lie about that either. I'll just call the second or third person for that round to keep it fair, to keep it moving. After the lecture, I'm using the buzzer for 5 quiz questions. First person to buzz gets to answer. If they get it right, they get candy. If not, I open it up to the next person. This serves 2 purposes. It checks for understanding after the lecture, and it keeps the buzzer energy going for actual assessment instead of just random word listening. Remember, I saw this demonstrated at the Georgia Ed Tech Conference, and it kept me alert during a presentation. And we all know that teachers have a lot in common with tired freshmen the week of exams. And I have used CrowdBuzzer before, and it really does keep the kids alert. The anticipation of when you're going to say the word, the competition element, the immediate reward, it taps into everything ninth graders love. Look, is this my best teaching? No. Is it what December requires? Yes. I'm not giving 45-minute lectures. I'm breaking things up with Think, Pair, Share. I'm using the buzzer to inject some fun and competition into direct instruction. I'm keeping it as short as possible. But sometimes you just need students awake and listening, not inspired, not deeply engaged in inquiry based learning, which I don't think is going to happen right before the break, the week of exams. We just need them awake and we need them processing the information they need to be successful. That's what these strategies do. They're survival mode tactics for when you have to lecture and nobody wants to be there. Although I'll be honest, Think, Pair, Share is pretty good at any time. Here's some practical tips if you want to try these. For Think, Pair, Share, keep the time tight. 2 minutes for thinking, 1 minute for pair share. Do not let it drag or they'll get off task. Use visible thinking tools like mini dry erase boards or sleeves so you can see who's confused in real time. They should definitely be writing during the think time. If you don't have the dry erase boards or sleeves, they can jot it on notebook paper, and you can add an element of incentive by taking it up at the end of class and letting them know you'll be taking it up. Circulate during the think time. That's when you catch misunderstandings before they become whole class problems. If students haven't done sentence expansion before, model it first. Show them what a good sentence looks like. But once they've done it a few times, they can generally run with it, especially if you scaffold with the who, what, when, where, why, and how. For the buzzer trick, check out my blog post at leahcleary.com/10 total participation techniques. I have a video that demonstrates how to set up CrowdBuzzer. Keep the candy cheap and simple, Jolly Ranchers, Dum Dums, whatever's on sale. Sprinkle the target word strategically. Don't say it constantly or the novelty wears off and you will run out of candy. Set expectations before you start. This is fun, but we're still learning. If it gets too chaotic, we're going to stop. Be ready to manage the competition. Freshmen will get very into this, and honestly, even upperclassmen will. That's good for engagement, but you need to keep it from derailing the actual content. After Monday's lectures, we're hitting review mode. And honestly, we are always reviewing. I'm using short 15-minute review strategies to keep things moving and to keep students engaged. I've got a blog post about how to review for exams in 15 minutes or less at leahcleary.com/review for exams in 15 minutes or less. Again, I'm going to put this in the show notes. I share 3 quick review strategies, and there's a free resource in my resource library called Study Guide 555. It's a great short review strategy that keeps students actively processing instead of passively rereading notes. Because here's the thing. We don't have time for long, drawn-out review sessions this week. Exams start Tuesday. We need quick, efficient strategies that actually help students retain information. Think, Pair, Share, and the buzzer trick get us through Monday's content. Then we pivot to review. And then, and this is the good part, we get into winter break. You don't have to love lecturing. You don't have to be at your best right now. You just have to get through the content students need with everyone's sanity mostly intact. These 2 strategies, Think, Pair, Share, and the buzzer trick, these are tools for when you don't have a choice about direct instruction, because sometimes we don't. They're not revolutionary. They're not going to change your whole teaching philosophy, but they're going to keep students awake and thinking when the alternative is glazed over staring. Pick one, try it this week, or don't, and just survive however you need to survive. We're almost there. Exams are this week. Winter break is right around the corner. You can do this. Thanks so much for listening to If Teachers Ruled the World. I'm Leah Cleary. And if you want step-by-step instructions for CrowdBuzzer or more engagement strategies, check out my blog at leahcleary.com/10 total participation techniques. And if you need quick review strategies for this week, grab the free Study Guide 555 review slide from my free resource library. Again, I'll put how you can sign up for it in the show notes. Take care of yourself. We, my friends, are almost done, at least until January. That's it for this week on If Teachers Ruled the World. Be sure to subscribe, share with a teacher friend, and join the conversation at leahcleary.com. Until next time, keep ruling your classroom and rewriting the rules.